Howdy, welcome. This is John's D&D vlog, episode number 49, and we're going to talk about this module. I usually start off these reviews by just saying welcome and then saying the name of the module and that I'm going to review it, but before I can do that, how do you pronounce that last word, right? And what is that last word, and what does it mean? So I guess that's where I'm going to be starting off talking about this module today. Let's look at a couple of home pages. So this is one page I found where they try to explain how to pronounce the word. So just take a listen.
Jarl. Jarl.
But it sounds like a British person is doing the talking, right? Okay, here's another page. And this is a computer who's doing the talking, and this is an American website, right?
Jarl. Jarl.
Okay, so you've got a British person who's saying this.
Jarl.
But then you've got an American computer who's saying this.
Jarl.
Right?
Jarl.
So, what's the truth? I don't know. Anyway, here's one good site that I saw for it actually has a person from Norway, or actually Swedish, right? Who's reading all these god names, right? But it's a little kid. It's insulting, but he's doing an actual really good job of explaining how to do the pronunciation. So, have a good time. I'm going to say Jarl. Jarl. That's what I'm going to say, as the stupid American that I happen to be. So, here's the next question. What exactly does Jarl do? What is the word? What does it mean, right? So it's actually pretty simple, right? It's the same. In English, it just translates directly over to Earl, right? But for those of us who have absolutely no idea what royalty and what the different nobility titles mean, let's look at the word Earl, okay? So an Earl is a member of the nobility. The title is Anglo-Saxon in origin, akin to the Scandinavian form Jarl, meant chieftain, particular a chieftain set to rule a territory in a king's stead. So in other words, he's the guy who's in charge. He is the guy who's in charge when the king isn't around. So I'm going to get a little bit more picky about the name of the module again. Sorry, I don't mean to be a punk, but there is some confusion, so I wanted to get past it, right? The word glacial, right? When I first saw the name of the module, I saw the word glacial, and I assumed that what Gary was trying to say was that this whole stronghold of the frost giants was actually in a glacier somewhere, right? If that's the case, then why are there rock caverns in it? Also, if it's a glacier, why wouldn't all the rocks that the giants are throwing around have to be imported in from somewhere else? Also, if it's a glacier, doesn't that mean that teleport spells aren't going to work very well? Glaciers move, right? Teleport spells would therefore be a very dangerous thing to try and use, right? Lastly, there's a Remoraz in here, and Remoraz's bodies are extremely hot, and if this thing was just a glacier, it would just melt straight through, all the way down to the ocean, right? It would need to have some sort of rock inside of this structure in order to keep that Remoraz inside. Once again, sorry to be so nitpicky, but the word glacial actually has several meanings, and two of them have nothing to do at all with glaciers, right? Devoid of warmth and cordiality, and the other is even simpler. It's just extremely cold. So the word glacial can be used, and it's not a glacier. So now that we know what that means, I can actually start off this properly. So let's start over. Howdy, welcome. This is John's D&D vlog, episode number 49. This is Jonathan Scott. Today I'm going to talk about the module G2, the Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl. And for those of us who don't speak a Gygaxian level of English, we can also refer to this module as G2, the giant, inhospitable, and tremendously cold crack in the ice and the frost giant who rules over it, unless of course the actual king happens to be around. As usual, as always with these module reviews that I do, please, if you're a player, don't watch this because I'm going to be giving away stuff that will make your experience less fun. So please don't watch this episode any further if you're a player. This is a list of all the modules that Gary actually published as adventures, as modules through TSR. So if you look at the list under 1978, Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl, this is the second module Gary ever published. So that should just put things into perspective for you. I mean, it's a great module, everybody loves it, but this is like the second thing he made. Also, concerning this list, I've heard that actually the Temple of Elemental Evil, that Gary actually had quite a bit to do with that one, but I don't know, I wasn't there, I couldn't see. So I'm going to let people who are smarter than me about Temple of Elemental Evil actually put information into the comments below this video, and you can explain the history all you want. As I was looking through the modules that Gary had published, what I feel like I noticed something that was kind of important, right? The first couple of modules that Gary made were only 12 pages long, and that counts everything, including all the text and the maps, cover art, everything, right? But then it seemed as though Gary's modules got bigger and more complex over the years. I mean, I wish we had had some stories written by him after 1985, and there are probably some out there, but just not for D&D. But nonetheless, I hope that you can see the progression that's going on and how his modules became more complex. I thought that was kind of interesting. So this is the way that I usually use this module, right? So it's a big story progression. A progression is a series of modules that usually get run together, right? And in this particular instance, I've got all of these modules that I run one after the next, and it slowly brings the player characters all the way from level 1 up to level 15. This is how I do it. I've heard of other people doing it different ways. They like to include A1 to 4 in there as well. I don't do that. I just use these. But it seems to work pretty well for us. So these modules, for decades and decades and decades, these modules were all extremely reasonably priced. You could get some of these modules 10 some years ago, even 15 some years ago. I mean, you could get them for like $5 to $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 each. But recently, thanks to TV shows like The Big Bang Theory and another one called Stranger Things, all of a sudden, out of the blue, D&D stuff is starting to go through the roof, which I'm sorry to say because it kind of takes the fun out of it. It's too bad. If you want to get your hands on some of these older modules, it's actually quite a bit of money nowadays, which is frustrating. Anyway, if you want the actual real modules that were published back in 1978, this is what you're going to have to pay for them. I wouldn't pay these prices. There's cheaper ways to go. They republished the series a while back in this compilation, G1 to 3, and you can get them for still pretty reasonable. That's one way to go, and then they've also got this other thing called GDQ 1 to 7, which has all of the modules. I mean, that progression that I just showed you, it's got the bottom 7 modules all put together into one book, which, I mean, if you look at this price, it looks outlandish, but honestly speaking, it's probably cheaper than if you buy the individual modules. The cheapest way, of course, to go is to get stuff through Drive-Through RPG, right? Because then you're just getting a PDF. It's much cheaper, right? What I did was I searched for Steading of the Hill Giant, which was the name of the first of these modules, right? And then, where was that? Down here they've got this bundle. They give you a special price for all of the PDF files. So all the files that you need to run the module, which is just these 4, right? But you can get it for just $17.96, which is, I mean, most people can afford that. If you're playing D&D, that means you've got some money available to you, which means you can probably afford this. Anyway, like that progression I was just showing you, it began with the module Temple of Elemental Evil. That one's a little bit pricey nowadays too. They did a survey of all the best modules ever made, and Temple of Elemental Evil came in like number 4. And the GDQ series, the Giant's Drow and the Queen of the Demon Web Pits, the last one in the series, that came out in number 1. So I'm showing you the most popular modules nowadays. So it's a little bit of money. It's too bad. I mean, I wish you'd bought this stuff like 10 years ago. I was buying them for, I think I got some of them for like $5 each. This is a guide I made for this module. To find out where you can download it from, just check the info out for this video on YouTube. I'll have all the download links listed there. I'll just show you what's in the guide. As a rule, I've got all these thacos listed here for all the different monsters that you're going to encounter in the book. There's actually not many monsters here in this story. It really is a huge share of them are just frost giants. And from there, I go over my super brief breakdown where I just explain the story really quick. And then there's dragons in this one, so I put the stats for those guys in here. First edition dragons tend to be wimpy, so I got stats for second edition dragons here.
It's actually not a very complex module, right? And then I redraw the maps, so I have the maps. I drew them again myself. I also put in each location not only the number of the area, but also what's in that area, right? It makes it a lot easier when you're running this thing if you know what's happening all around the area where your PCs are in. For the record, I don't include these maps. I'm hoping someday Wizards of the Coast will give me the nod and allow me to sell them. But even if they don't, I still need them so I can run the modules adequately for myself. So anyway, that's the guide. I suggest you check it out. At the very end of this thing are all the XP lists and treasure tables, right? So you can go to each given room within here and know how much XP the PCs will get if they kill the monsters in there, but then also like how much gold is in the room, or like how much total weight of gold is in the entire dungeon. That's in there too. So anyway, the guide's helpful. I suggest you check it out. So on to the actual story, I guess. At the end of G1, Steading of the Hill Giant Chief, the players probably found either the teleportation chain or at least the map that gave them the directions to this new locale. A frozen wasteland that has a big crack in the ice that allows passage to a series of caves underneath. So it's going to be cold. It's a cold, cold place. If your players aren't prepared for it, just standing here alone should cause them damage. For the record, this is where Gary and Dave are from. They both knew all about the cold. How cold is it? I got a car from my brother once. It was an old 1963 Chevy Impala station wagon. In the middle of winter, I drove up there to pick it up. It wouldn't start, so after many different attempts, the final solution my brother came up with to get the car to start was to build a campfire underneath it, so that the oil would thin out just enough so that the car would finally start. That was the solution that finally worked. That's how drastic it is there sometimes. My brother didn't do it like this. He did it in a way so that the car didn't start on fire, but nonetheless, he built a fire under a car. P.S. Don't try that at home, and I'm not responsible for it if you do. Gary knew the cold, and he probably also had a very good idea of what a frost giant would look like. Being from Minnesota, we all have a very good idea of what a frost giant would probably look like, so we knew exactly what this dungeon was going to look like as we were walking through it. Being from the Midwest, he knew all about the sorts of problems being in the cold offers, right? So on the first map where it shows those areas that are extremely slippery, where if you slip, you will fall off the cliff and die, he's not kidding. In the super cold, you are only safe as long as you constantly remind yourself to be careful. As soon as you let go and allow yourself to feel at ease, that's exactly the moment that you're going to fall down and hurt yourself. So if your players tell you that they put on their crampons and have tied themselves together and are being super careful, fine, but eventually over time they're going to get used to it, and then once they're going to not remind you that they put their stuff on, and then they're going to go walk on that ice, and then that's when you get them. Be patient. It is coming, and then they will think you're being very unfair, but you're not. You get them. Okay, just some war stories, and I'll give you advice along the way, stuff that I can remember, stuff that worked out well for me. So one thing I've noticed about this module is there's just not a lot of magic, right? You've got these Ogre Magi here, but aside from that, there's just not a lot of magic going on around here. So that's a huge advantage for your players, right? Your players can teleport in and out, they can cast spells, they've got a lot they can do, and the Frost Giants, all they can do is throw rocks and punch, right? So keep that in mind. Your Frost Giants are a little bit at a disadvantage, okay? Also, Walls of Force are extremely powerful, and this is where my players first started using them. And once the players decided to put a Wall of Force across here, and that effectively shut off this entire cavern. There was nothing anybody could do, right? The one thing I did do, I took the Ogre Magi and I had them go out this escape tunnel and then come back in from the top and attack the players from behind, but it took a really long time, right? So that's one of the ways in that these Frost Giants are kind of handicapped in their own home. So anyway, stuff to keep in mind. I'll keep going here. I decided in this, it says frozen meat storage. I put prisoners in there, right? So this is in this set of modules, there's a lot of teleporting going on. They're teleporting in from different locations. So I decided what that meant was that these actual fortresses were like all across the planet, right? So they were capturing people wherever they were, and they would bring these people back to wherever as food, right? So in this one particular cavern, there were 20 people freezing to death, and the giants would just come in from time to time and pick one up and start chewing on them, right? So when the PCs came and delivered these guys, and they brought them back to the main city that I used called Eastbrook, right? What they ended up finding out was that there were a lot of prisoners there who didn't even speak the language that they spoke. They were from completely different continents. So it was a good way for my players to get to explore my world a little bit, right? It's such a big opportunity to bring in role-playing aspects, though. So I put that in there. Down here, the Remoraz, right? I didn't have a lot of experience running Remorazes before, so tigers have big teeth and they have claws, and they know which parts of them are the most dangerous, and those are the parts that they use. A Remoraz should know that too. So he's got the claws and he's got the bite, fine. But honestly speaking, if he can belly flop on one of the players, it's 10d10 worth of damage, right? He would know how much damage he could do. So he would be very happy to find somebody and then just belly flop on them. And that would probably take out more than half of your players just in one shot. So keep in mind the Remoraz is a lot more deadly than the monster manual suggests, right? Also, when I was looking at the Remoraz, I decided that I saw stuff that looked like wings, right? So I let him do limited jumps. The players, they put a wall of force right here. They're trying to box him in. I let him jump out over the top of this, right, with like a wing-assisted jump. He can't fly per se, but he was able to get out of the pit, so the players couldn't just take pot shots at him. Anyway, do them right, and it'll be a memorable thing. Also, this whole cave complex, everywhere, it's frozen, frozen, frozen everywhere. And the only clue I gave these guys about what was in this little area was that in this area there was no ice, and things were not frozen like they saw everywhere else. And then eventually they realized something important was happening there. What I noticed is that when you went from room to room to room, it's frost giants, frost giants, frost giants, and they're just attacking frost giants over and over and over again, which gets a little boring. So how do you add variety to something where there is no variety, right? Inside the Dungeon Master's Guide, there's those personality charts, right? So if you can roll up a few of the personalities of these frost giants before the players meet them, there will be variations in how those frost giants go into these situations. So I thought that was actually kind of helpful. So like here at the end, I rolled for the Jarl's personality, and I got bully or something like that, which means as soon as he lost, he started crying, which the players were happy to see. The dragons, one of the thief was here exploring. The players were all really down low on spell points. The clerics had almost nothing. The thief went down here to explore just one more area. He fell through. The dragon got him and killed him in one shot, and that was an eventful day. It was fun. I highly suggest you use 2nd edition dragons and not 1st. I highly suggest it. The Storm Giantess, right? So you got a Cloud Giant here who's an ally, but you got a Storm Giantess who's here as a prisoner. Why are all these giants getting together? Why are they being helpful? You need some kind of a reason for that, right? The reason shows up in D3 Volta the Drow, but honestly speaking, why are the giants helping out? So I've got it so that all the main leaders of all these different giant tribes have been enslaved, taken prisoner by the Drow, and because they don't want their leader to be killed, all these different sorts of giants are willing to obey the Drow, right? But the Storm Giants are resisting, right? They're fighting back. That's why she's in chains, and that's why this guy, and also the Cloud Giant in G1, Studying of the Hill Giant Chief, that's why he's being helpful also. If you can understand the backstory a little bit, it helps the role-playing go a little bit more smoothly. So, anyway, what ended up happening was the Storm Giantess is huge, right? So they used a reduction spell on her, and they got her to be about 9 feet tall. And once she got to be about that size, they were able to teleport her away. I'm not going to let the players teleport a full-blown Storm Giant, but once they reduced her, they could. So they got her back to the main city, and then they used the higher level wizards in town to actually take her back to her cloud city. And as soon as she explained her predicament to the government there, the government sent a small band of storm giants to storm out what was left of this place. And then that's how they were able to get to the Jarl and kill him. It was an interesting experience. Everybody had a pretty good time. Anyway, it's a good module, but you're going to have to add your own panache to it to make it more interesting. It doesn't give much in the way of story. It's just a map full of stuff for your players to kill, but if you add your own campaign data to it, it makes it pretty interesting. So anyway, that's the end of it for this week. Thank you for your time. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good day.